Is it a serious attempt at global diplomacy? Or would you say that this is more of a personal power project that is being built around U.S. President Donald Trump, especially when he's out of office?
Well, it can be more than one thing at the same time. I think we have to somehow, at some point, detach skepticism about the issue at hand versus the person at hand. It's extremely difficult to take Trump seriously given the nature of his very being and how he expresses himself, and just the constant stream of nonsense that comes from that quarter. But the fact is, he gets stuff done, no doubt about it. At times. At other times, he doesn't end the war in Ukraine in one day, and he just moves on, and the nonsense continues. So let's look at what we have here. If this works, there really would be a replacement UN. That seems unnecessary to satisfy one man's vanity, but on the other hand, the UN, in many ways, is a monumental failure. The Security Council is paralyzed by vetoes and does not represent the world as it is today, but rather as it was in 1945. The General Assembly has a majority of autocracies, and there's just nothing good that's going to come out of that. The various UN bodies are a collection, in some cases, of useful things like the World Health Organization, but in other cases, nonsense, like human rights councils led by, the world's worst human rights violators. And really, the obsession against Israel in several of these bodies is legion and comical, or maybe more correctly, tragicomical. It's absurd. So the UN has completely failed. I would say 100% failed to be a peacemaker in the world. The various peacekeeping forces are, mostly known for either sexual abuses in Africa or utter failures like in Lebanon. So replacing the UN, while it seems like unnecessary, if you look at it carefully, may not be so unnecessary. But on the other hand, the Board of Peace, which began as like this notion of something to do with Gaza, but if you look at the announcement last week, has nothing, it doesn't even mention Gaza, looks like a Trumpian boondoggle. He decides who joins. He decides who stays. He can approve every decision. He approves all the monies, and he's asking for $1 billion per country that wants to stick around. So it's a weird situation in the world where the existing world order has failed, but for the new world order to be carved out of the cast of Trump looks like an absurdity. And yet, viewed from the Middle East prism, he did succeed in ending the Gaza war, which Biden did not.
He is actually going towards finding diversifying sources of income and energy for the United States of America, strengthening the United States as the leader of the changing order, and it's certainly changing, and understanding that if he attacks Iran, for example, there seems to be a kind of an axis, a potential axis that is formulating, for example, a new Iran with Israel, India, UAE, and so on, understanding that the Saudi Arabia, Turkey, other kind of axis is formulating on the other side, and in fact, creating a mechanism at his hands to maneuver this new order. And that's what I think he's doing with this piece, because obviously, I don't know if it's a board or a piece. It's certainly not a peace board. I mean, there's nothing to do with peace here. Peace is nowhere at all to be seen, no, neither in Gaza, nor in Syria, nor anywhere. On the contrary, but I think it's a real attempt to truly maneuver our attention away from the real thing.
Ruth, I have to say, I hear you, and I understand the argument, but you're ascribing a lot of sophistication to a person who at least pretends he doesn't know how tariffs work and seems to be obsessed with windmills. It's conceivable, but the actual product that we're seeing on the ground, in addition to the end of the war in Gaza, which I wouldn't necessarily be indifferent to, is a situation where he seems to be aligned with Putin to weaken Europe. So when you speak of U.S. leadership, it's what leadership of the free world, of the Western alliance, which he projects complete indifference to in a way that is shocking to America's allies.
But I don't think he cares about America's allies. I think he cares about the United States of America.
So when he...
And strengthening and fortifying and diversifying sources of income and energy, and its leadership in the world. I don't think he cares about the
The
UN.
European Union
He cares about-
is a big trading partner and has been very helpful to America on the security front. And when he seems to disdain democracy and prefer autocrats, I'm not sure that'll be so great for America.
So the Gaza Strip is completely demilitarized. Israeli forces will not withdraw. This is the position of the Trump administration, that it presented it to this Board of Peace. But we also heard Ali Shah saying that they will operate under the directive of one administration, one law, and one weapon. And this is the body that is supposed to, with its 10 to 15,000 police officers who have been trained in Egypt and in Jordan, they're supposed to undergo this task. Will they succeed? Will they actually be willing to do this? There are many issues that remain to be seen. How successful will this new government in Gaza be in improving the daily life of Gazans?
There's very great likelihood they'll succeed in massive improvement if indeed the monies come in for the reconstruction. But that will not happen, as everyone keeps saying, without Hamas disarming. That this is a condition is clear to us, but it isn't sufficiently clear to the Palestinians. So I have a great idea. The Board of Peace, if it wants to not be a fiction, as its first event, can hold the massive meeting with Qatar, with Turkey, and with everyone, and take this position and put it before the Palestinian people, and create a situation where they really have to choose. And Khalil Shkaki can do his polls that will show us if the Palestinians want Hamas to disarm or not. They need to feel the pressure. It's not going to be the PA police that's going to force them to disarm.
Right. And that's according to the plan, but it's not going to be.
They have to agree. They have to.
Yes, and that's what the plan says. Working with Hamas, we can raise endless eyebrows as to that. But we heard the head of the Palestinian government in Gaza say, one law, one weapon. And he will be supported by the High Representative Nikolai Mladinov,
let's make it public,
who was the former special coordinator of the UN to the Middle East. Again, this will be determined by the resolve of the Trump administration and his officials who are going to oversee this
Unfortunately, we have to turn to our next story because we have a guest waiting to.
And it's unfathomable that the United States has let the Kurds down.
Yeah, Dan, I'm interested to hear your perspective as to why the United States has deemed, standing with the SDF no longer of interest, in the face of these burgeoning relations with the new Syrian government.
Well, by the United States, we're talking about the Trump administration. Should their hand be stayed by the midterm elections, or more likely by the 2028 elections that could create a reversal? This might change, although by then anything could happen. Basically, the Kurds are opposed by Erdogan, whom Trump seems to like, because he likes autocrats. And they're opposed, obviously, by the Ashara Giulani government, which wants to reconstitute Syria as a unitary state. And Trump has basically decided to believe in the idea of redemption, that this former jihadist can run a proper government, it can be trusted. He canceled all the sanctions. And therefore, I have to conclude that Trump has some sympathy for the idea that Syria
not the only one that
can indeed be reconstituted.
The sanctions. The Europeans have also taken away the sanctions. And this is something that is questionable in terms of not only morality, but
but the world has
strategic reason.
The world has an interest in seeing Syria have a proper government and have investment returned to Syria, and we're all speculating about whether it's conceivable that this guy Giulani Ashara could really have turned over a new leaf. And if you look at the way they ran northwestern Syria, when they basically controlled that, when Syria was divided into fiefdoms, it was bad, but it wasn't terrible. I think that's more or less what you can say about Idlib. It's a gamble either way. It's terrible for the Kurds. They're relatively liberal and Western-oriented in general, but they're in a horrible geographical position. Basically, their area is divided between illiberal countries like Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Turkey, that hates them, is their best-case scenario. So good luck with that. They would need a lot of support to somehow cobble together a country out of all this. Their biggest success to date has been in Iraq, exploiting the weakness of Iraq, where they really have autonomy. Clearly, the outside world, including Europe, as you say, has decided they're not going to fight for the Syrian Kurds. Europe talks a decent game when it comes to humanitarian and such areas, but they're not going to help them militarily. France, a little bit more, but not that much. They're kind of on their own. And at this point, I fear that realistically they're going to lose their autonomy zone. Whether Turkey will be stronger in Syria because it no longer has the buffer of the Kurds, I don't know.
At this point, autonomy seems to be the least of their worries.
A little bit,
These
yeah. The question is,
in fact true that ISIS fighters are being released
can
from
Kurds
prisons?
become citizens of Syria and have that work out for them in any way that is safe?